The United States elected President Trump, and a fellow by the Steve Miller are getting ready to perform some. They're referring to them as somebody referred to them as targeted arrests, and they're going to go around and they're going to have mass deportations. And this is pretty serious. And Mr. Miller had a place in Donald Trump's previous administration where he was in charge of taking care of the folks that came into the border. And one thing that he did in order to dissuade folks from coming was he separated the children from the parents. This is the guy. At the end of that, there was still like 500 of them missing. Apparently there's more than that. So he's a Jewish guy, and he attends this place out there in California, a temple, and the particular rabbi there was getting asked questions. Hey, what were you teaching this guy that he's behaving like that? And he took time to point out that he didn't teach those things to that guy, and he wrote a letter to Stephen Miller about this. And now he's back. So Steve Miller is back, and what's he doing there? But okay, let's hear the letter, and we'll go from there. So this is you can find it on YouTube. There's a long 3-hour service at the very nice temple, and this starts at the period for at 2 hours 30 minutes and 32 seconds. So it's entitled "A Letter to Stephen Miller, Senior Advisor to the President." Dear Stephen Miller, I was once your rabbi. When you were 9 or 10 years old, your family attended here at Beth Shir Shalom. You attended our own school. The actions that you now encourage President Trump to take make it obvious to me that you didn't get my or our Jewish message. I understand that you were a major contributor to the zero tolerance policy, turning Jeff Sessions' initiative to punish and to deter desperate families from coming to the United States by separating the children from their parents at the border. That notion is completely antithetical to everything I know about Judaism, Jewish law, and Jewish values. And we all know there are still about 500 of those children who have not yet been reunited with their parents. And again, there's more than that are still out there somewhere. If I could get another chance to share with you what Judaism says about children and their families, here's what I would try to teach you today. In Exodus 23:19, we learn, quote, "We shall not boil a kid in its mother's milk," unquote. In Leviticus 22:28 suggests, quote, "No animal from the herd or from the flock shall be slaughtered on the same day with its young," unquote, close quotes. And one more, Mr. Miller, Deuteronomy 22:6 reads, "If along the road you chance upon a bird's nest in any tree or on the ground with fledglings or eggs, and the mother sitting over the fledglings or the eggs, do not take the mother together with her young." In the strictest interpretation of Jewish law, these commandments are only taken literally, however. Judaism never reads a biblical verse only by its most simple law. Our Attorney General and President Trump might, but Judaism doesn't. Commonly known by a certain rabbi, sorry I couldn't write his name out there, commonly known by an acronym, comments that these three commandments, the three commandments that I mentioned, do not merely focus upon the specifics about which they speak. The reason he says for these commandments is to teach us the trait of mercy and that we not become cruel. Since cruelty spreads in the soul of humanity, from the Jewish perspective, the parent-child relationship is sacrosanct. Disrupting it is cruel. Mr. Miller, the policy that you come to conceive and put into practice is cruel. What you would have learned from me is that ours is a spiritual path that is focused on one task: bringing the shattered pieces of the vessel of which the universe was born back together in both literal and spiritual repair and healing of transcendent influence in events. Mr. Miller, Judaism is a way of responding to the mundane and the unexpected, always seeking the response that is at once the most just and the most merciful. We choose that which shows in our history to be we choose to recall and emphasize our most ancient ancestor Abraham as a wandering, don't got the name there, that is a refugee, an immigrant, so they consider Abraham a refugee. We choose to remember and underscore that the quintessential experience of the Jewish people is both the slavery in and the exodus from ancient Egypt. We are all refugees, Mr. Miller. More recently, especially because the eyewitness of the events of the Holocaust will soon be all dead, and then they were children when it and that they were children when it happened, we choose to remember that more through the eyes of children. Children like Anne Frank and her older sister Margot, who died in Treblinka after they were taken away from their parents. Children like those who were part of Kindertransport sent out of Germany to Great Britain from 1938 to 1939 because their parents were already in concentration camps or they were unable to support them. These were Jewish unaccompanied minors. Jews are an uncomfortable people. We are never satisfied with the work being done, always tweaking, always nuancing, and finding a slightly different melody, a more subtle and supple choreography for this dance we call life. Let's move a day that is self-evident to all that we have assembled every piece of the universe's. Let's move towards a day that is self-evident to all that we have assembled every piece of the universe's birth vessel and finally tuned to the mercy and justice components of our most immediate and worldwide actions. We are not done. Honestly, Mr. Miller, you have set the Jewish contribution to making the world spiritually whole through your arbitrary. You have set back the Jewish contribution to making the world spiritually whole through your arbitrary vision of these desperate families at our southern border. It's not that we can't reverse what we've done. We can, and we are, and we will, along with our sisters and brothers who are Muslim and Christian and Hindu and Sikh and Buddhist and Unitarian and Jain and Catholic peoples, and then more. We are a coalition of the divinely mandated. We answer to a moral and ethical code that comes from the core of the universe and has many colorful and intricate manifestations. All of them speak one ultimate message of love, cooperation, understanding, and rescue. And yes, all of these spiritualities have been corrupted and crushed by those who cloak themselves in their beauty and positivity only to perpetuate the kind of negativity, violence, malice, and brutality that you do with your actions. The same activities you would condemn in others. Those of us who know the goals of love and peace as the foundations of all our individual spiritual paths have fought against this corruption for millennia, and we will keep doing so. We are not going away, Mr. Miller, and whether you identify now as a Jew or not is really not my concern. What is troublesome to me is that some of my colleagues and others are concerned about what I might have taught you when you were a member of our community. I can assure you, as I have assured them, that what I taught is a Judaism that cherishes wisdom, values, and a world that has been home for over 4 millennia, widening horizons, and even a wider embrace. That's what I and others taught at Beth Shir Shalom. Is there still time? Is there still a chance you might right your attitude? That's up to you, Mr. Miller. Our sense of mandate comes from the inside out. As one beautiful commentary points out, the oneness of the being called God places our commandments on our hearts. We must bring them into our hearts. I will never give up hope that you can open your heart, Mr. Miller. In the meantime, I will act in accordance with the values that our tradition invades. The values that go beyond the superficial, time, expediencies, and allegiance to a temporal leader, and I will engage you in the struggle for the sake of all that is righteous for heaven. Not merely what you deem is right, but a struggle for is simultaneously just and merciful, not merely what you may deem is necessary. There's a couple of other words. The kind of ends that you create, Mr. Miller, about a triumphant winner and a loser rendered non-functional. Your ends are built upon arbitrary executive off orders, with the sudden launching of a policy that has never run the rapids of the checks and balances that are hallmark of this democracy in which we are so fortunate in which we live. This is the season of apology. To get to apology, some would say shame over a past action or actions is necessary. In fact, some shout at others when they are so righteous enough, "You should be ashamed of yourself." Well, that's not something I would ever shout or command. That's yours, Mr. Miller. First, you must own what you've done. You have permanently damaged the lives and psyches of hundreds of families and particularly thousands of children with your immoral policy. You can choose to accept responsibility for the havoc you've wrought and the wounds you inflicted, or not. You can feel that you have indeed wronged these people and apologize to them, or not. You can take some action that seems to heal and rectify the injury you've caused, or walk away, wrapping yourself in the deflecting guise of national security. Know this: regardless of whether the Trump decides to be the Trump administration decides to be accountable, we are choosing to be accountable. We will be as Abraham, Joshua, Yeshua taught us so precisely in a free society. Some are guilty, all are responsible. Because we want this society to remain free, we will continue to act. Someone needs to clean up this mess. Someone needs to find a way in concert with many others to bring this to an end. And I think it will be this long-suffering, uncomfortable Jewish people. Do you know the Yiddish word mensch, Mr. Miller? In Yiddish, a mensch is a fully constituted human and humane being. In Hebrew, in parallel to the word mensch, somebody taught us, sorry, don't get that part. Quote, in a place where no one is acting like a mensch, be one. And that's what we'll be doing, Mr. Miller, because that's what we are. We can only hope you will decide to join us. Amen. I don't know who this guy, Mr. Miller, is, and I'm finding out more about what he did the last time, and I don't want it to do it this time. I'm paying my taxes, and I don't want them spent on this sort of foolishness and anger, uncaring, unjust, and cruel behavior. Thank you.